Happy 2021, bandheads. We made it. It's 2021, a new year. We have a new administration, still same COVID, but we've got some things to look forward to. And so I am so pleased to be giving you all this podcast as we make our way through the year. I took some time off, rested, relaxed, and so I'm ready to bring y'all some new interviews. So I'm not going to delay it anymore. This first interview is with my friend, my brother, my partner, Mike Lee. Mike and I, over 20 years ago, we created a website called The Fifth Quarter, which was dedicated to promoting HBCUbands. And this is somebody, I know I talk about in some of these podcasts, these people are like family. No, this is really family. Like, I can't even put into words how much he's been there for me over the years, and hopefully the same for him. So I am just gonna let him talk about his time being a drum major and marching in Alabama A&M. So here you go, Mike. How you doing?
Okay, I am good. I am doing very good. Thank you for asking. It's been an interesting year. 2020 is an interesting year. It's been difficult on many fronts, but I think in the things that we look at as in quality of life, enjoyment. When you look at the arts, the events, to travel, to things like that. When you lose that, that's when things start to change for people. And I've been thinking about that pretty deeply. Arts are really one of the first things that left us, really. And well, it wasn't necessarily the first. Well, I guess it was on the front end. Like Broadway was shut down, and sports were shut down, and things like that. And that's what sets the enjoyment of life apart. All right, you have your work, but when you don't have your arts, that's when there's a challenge. I think that's where people start to feel it.
Yeah, well, I know we're definitely feeling it as band heads. So, yeah. Mike, you are my brother. It's no introduction need to be said between us. You know how it goes. And so really, I just want to talk to you kind of like how your journey through marching at HBCU band. Of course, you went to Alabama A&M and you were a drum major. And then afterwards, you and I got together and we formed the Fifth Quarter. Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is, it's really interesting. I think about that all the time. I think about that journey to the Fifth Quarter, to, leadership after band life and everything. And it's all based in band, right? It's all, everybody is comprised of what they were before a particular moment, right? And, I can draw a line back to what I was before I went to Alabama A&M, or who I was before Alabama A&M, and who I am now. And the only thing that I can, the biggest part of that trajectory is my experience with marching band, with HBCU marching. It is truly part of who I am. And that's kind of, what I've been thinking about, as we were talking about what marching band means to us as individuals. I've been thinking about that. See, I didn't march in high school.
Okay,
I wasn't in the band in high school.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Okay, so we'll go back to your hometown. So you're from Ohio originally, right? But you're a military brat, right?
Right, I'm a military brat, and so we moved every 4 years or so. My first 2 years in high school were in Shreveport, Louisiana. But then the last 2 years of my high school was in Dayton, a place called Fairborn, Ohio, is just outside of Dayton, is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And so I wanted to be in the band. I wanted to learn how to read music, play music from the 6th grade. That was in Louisiana, but my parents, right in the 6th grade, I moved to a private school, a Seventh-day Adventist school, and they didn't have music there. So I missed that opportunity. So I didn't get to join band. And so I was an athlete. I was an athlete in school. I played 4 sports. I played football, basketball, track, and golf.
I promise you, I did not notice about you after knowing you for so long. I had no idea.
I was the only person in my high school that played four sports. So they made a special trophy for me that actually had the four sports at the end of the year on there because I was the only person that played all four. And so I was really interested in music. And so I would do like the pit setup. So my school was a core style school. And so I wanted to be a part of the band. I wanted to be participant. Now, um, my last year in high school, I didn't play football because I broke two fingers. But I was really interested in band, so I was part of the pit setup. So I would travel to the competitions. I'd roll xylophones out. I'd set the percussion up and everything like that, and cheer, and then put it back up during the competitions. But in my during basketball season, my senior year, about halfway through the year, uh, I found a guy who was doing percussion lessons. And right after basketball practice, I would go to twice a week. I would go to a percussion lesson. Learn how to read music, rhythms, and so forth. And I would go home and I practiced like 3 hours a night reading. I got perfect. I got really good at reading percussion music, rhythms basically. And so I did 3 hours a week all through the winter, through the spring. And then I had an opportunity to audition for Central State University because that's where I was going to go, Central State, out in Xenia, Ohio. And I got a scholarship. I got a scholarship to march at Central. And plus, I got a thing called a commuter's grant, which if I lived off campus, my tuition was paid for, plus the band scholarship. So it was basically a full ride. But my dad retired and they didn't want to leave me in Ohio by myself. So I went and auditioned. So they moved to Alabama, auditioned at Alabama A&M and got a very good scholarship down there. And, my dad marched at A&M when he was in school.
I didn't know that.
So
you know what? That's not true.
Yeah,
I think I didn't know it. But what did he play?
He played a trumpet.
Okay.
He played the trumpet at Alabama A&M. And so that was a tough choice because I really wanted to be a marching marauder. That's what I set. I set to go there, and it was a great campus. It was a great program. Dr. Oliver, who eventually went to Alabama State, he was the band director up there, and we got close. We would talk all the time. So, like at the Magic City Classics during my time at A&M, I would go talk to Dr. Oliver, and we'd have a good time because we remembered each other. But I went to A&M, and that was my first time in a marching band. That was my first time lining up in a marching band at first day of band camp.
You've got to be kidding me. Number one, that I didn't know these details, and we go back so far, and then for you to end up doing the fifth quarter and you didn't grow up in that environment, it just kind of blows me away. Even though your dad did march for HBCU band.
Well, yeah, and so I did. I mean, we would go to when we were living in Louisiana, we would go to the Bayou Classic. We would go to the Magic City Classic periodically. So I mean, I grew up seeing HBCU marching bands, but I just I wasn't in the band. I knew I wanted to do that, but I didn't know how because I was an athlete.
So was it just like the injuries and things that you were kind of like, nah, I don't want to try to be an athlete in college, or you just knew you wanted to be in the band in college?
I mean, I wasn't that great. I wasn't that great of an athlete.
Okay.
I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not. Oh, it was an injury that. No, I just wasn't that great of an athlete. My high school was a white high school, and I was a tall black guy. So I mean, they can always use a tall black guy, in a white high school. So yeah.
So let's talk about at your band camp at A&M, and what was that like? Like, was it culture shock? I'm sure it had to be, right?
Yeah. And I tell people this all the time. Being a military brat, especially an officer, my dad was an aviator in the Air Force. You're not around a lot of black folks. You don't live around Black folks. You don't go to school with a lot of Black folks. So I was in culture shock. I had never been around that many Black people at one particular time. You know, we were marching about 280 at that point. So I have 279 other uh, Black students at the same place. I didn't know. I was just different. I'm sure I stood out. I've seen movies and looked at that point, it was VHS tapes and stuff like that of marching bands. I just had a different idea what a marching band was. I was looking at DCI type stuff. It
Right.
wasn't that.
Right.
It just wasn't that.
Yeah.
And so, so band camp started on a Monday, right? And we had a Sunday night band meeting. That's most with everyone. Everybody kind of comes
Hmm.
together and you kind of talk about that. And I remember walking in. I'm like, man, what in the world am I in for here? I have no idea what I'm doing. And what happens at A&M, the drum majors will come in after everybody kind of sits down and they'll call the band to attention. Now, obviously, the freshmen have no idea what's going on. Me, I had absolutely no idea what was going on. And they do all that. And I'm walking out of the band room. They say, all right, 5 o'clock, down here in the parking lot, be here, whatever. And a guy, his name was Barney Smart. You know Barney Smart.
Yes, yes.
I'm walking out. He plays saxophone. I'm a percussion person. And he looks at me and he's like, your name is gonna be Aya. He didn't know my name. He didn't know anything about me. He just knew I was a freshman. And from that point, that's how I got my crab name, is Aya. I didn't know anything about a crab name. I didn't know what crabbing was. I was like, he just gonna tell me my name is Aya. He doesn't even know my name.
I
What
didn't know
is
you gave
this? What kind of foolishness is this?
I didn't
Yeah,
know you gave you
Barney
that name.
Smart.
That's funny.
It was like Aya. And so everybody was like, yeah, Aya, Aya, that's his name, Aya. And that's what people call me to this day. So, I go the next day, come and I'm learning this marching style. I'm learning like these commands and like all this kind of stuff. It is a whirlwind. It is crazy. I was wearing, I guess on some level of research, I saw like people wearing like sunglasses and stuff like that at band camp and stuff. That stuff got snatched off of my face so quickly and thrown somewhere. And I snatched off. We don't wear freshmen don't wear, crabs don't wear sunglasses here. I'm like, what? Well, first of all, what's a crab? And secondly, why not? So, I make it through and it was different. It was a stressful time because it was all new to me.
Yeah.
Everything about marching band was new to me. The pressure, the memorization, the stress of standing at attention with an instrument strapped to you, the having to do things over and over and over again to memorize and it was stressful. So everything was brand new. It was like it was a blank slate. So it was a very intense situation for me, starting my freshman year.
I'm just trying to think like at least a lot of us, even if, because I went to a core style high school as well, and at least we kind of knew like what it was like to have commands and, practice over and over again. You didn't even have that. Wow. I just,
No. I mean, I had seen it because I was kind of hanging around marching band in high school, but I had no idea what I was doing. So I had a really steep learning curve and I had to learn things really quickly because I didn't want people to know that I didn't march in high school. I didn't want, so I started adapting myself to how people kind of walk around, is trying to, kind of fit in, if you, and I remember I was trying to fit in with Black culture as well as marching band culture, but I didn't realize marching band was a culture at that time. I thought it was just an activity. And there's a big difference between those two. And so, I felt myself trying to conform to these norms that people just automatically had. Like just a quick example, you know, like how do you carry your drum, right? Now, I
Mm-hmm.
ended up playing bass drum my first 2 years,
Okay.
right? And how do you carry that? How do you carry your drum? Somebody who's marching the band, no matter if it's core style or show style, you know how to carry your drum. So I'm trying to observe, I'm looking around, trying to observe how people carry themselves, carrying their instruments. You know, how do you hold your mallets when you're carrying your drum? You know, I don't want to be walking around, you know, with
Mm.
them held with my arm, you know, not really knowing where to hold the mallets for my. So I have to observe how people do this sort of thing. But what I was realizing is when I was looking at looking at culture, when I was looking at, you know, the band culture as well as Black culture and things, I realized that I didn't. This was closer to me than where the way I was previously, right? I felt more relaxed, right? I felt like I didn't have to speak a certain way. Well, my accent was a little different because I grew up around white people, but I felt like I wasn't judged as much about what I did, how I walked, or so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I felt like this is I saw a lot of me where I should have been versus a mask that I may have been wearing, you know, just from conditioning through high school and my environments.
I think that's what's so beautiful about it is that you get to go to school with people
Right.
throughout the diaspora. You know, you get to meet, you
Right.
know, people who grew up rich, people who grew up poor, everything in between, indigenous
Right.
Africans, you know, Hispanic
Right.
folks, you know, folks from all different backgrounds. So that's what I appreciate.
I saw I saw a meme once that said, you know, why did I what about something about HBCU is that, you know, for 4 years you're not the minority, right? You know, you're not a minority. And so you're for those 4 years, so you know, you're kind of yourself. You have your life to have to deal with the issues of being a minority in a community. So I felt myself learning a lot about myself, you know, through that first year. So much so to where, you know, I got this confidence about myself, especially after I pledged KKSI. I got this confidence about myself. It's like, you know, people care about Aya or Mike Lee. I had started calling myself Aya too. It was just easier to do that. And, you know, it's like I'm here. I'm doing well in school. You know, I'm navigating this marching band thing, and we're in concert band at that point. You know, I'm great at reading music. I just had this confidence about myself. After my freshman year, I had a confidence about myself that I did not know where it came from. You know, I had always been very self-critical of myself. My brother was the one where all the girls, you know, they would all chase after him. Me, not so much. I was kind of the geeky one, but I felt this sense of confidence and pride in myself because marching band was above most people on an HBCU campus. You know, above athletes, they were
Mm-hmm.
above. The SGA. You know, you're in the marching band. Wow, especially in the percussion section. So my sophomore year, obviously, was a little bit different. I had kind of gotten this idea. I kind of got an idea how this all works. You know, I was doing well in school, and I started feeling the idea of attention and leadership, right? And that's one of the things I tell people all the time. In marching band, is you start to develop yourself, right? Because marching band in itself is a hierarchy of culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're gonna have your freshmen, you're gonna have your senior people, then you're gonna have your leadership. You're gonna have your followers, you're gonna have your managers versus your pushers, everything like that, all heading towards the same direction. And I felt myself kind of bubbling up there. I started gaining in popularity. You know, I was tall, I was lanky. I started matching the stereotypical description of what a drum major was. Now, mind you, I'm not a great dancer, or I wasn't at the, you know, I grew up around white folks, so I didn't really know how to dance all that well, you know, but I got this confidence through this experience the Dust to Dawn parties, the homecoming, stuff like that, where, I felt confident in what I was able to do, but I felt more confident in my ability to lead a marching band program, lead the entire organization. Because we were we were a set of our drum majors at A&M. We actually lead, we actually teach, we teach the dance teams, we teach the drill, we teach the music, we direct throughout the entire show. We march, everything like that. We're telling which buses to get on. We're scheduling this, everything. We actually lead. And I felt that was a good place for me to be. And at that point, I was actually a leading contender for the presidency at Kappa Kappa Psi at A&M. I was gaining popularity in the fraternity. I was kind of leading the different activities. And so I was developing a presence, right? And I went home and told my mom, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try out to be a drum major. And she just laughed. She was like, Mike, you're gonna try out to be a drum major? Oh, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try out. And we have a little mini camp for drum majors, and it was pretty clear that I started standing out above the rest. There were a couple people who had been drum majors in high school, who were, they were show style. They were leading contenders. Everybody said, oh, this person, he was a drum major at, J.O. Johnson, which was the sister school of A&M. So he's going to be a drum major. And, such and such from Atlanta went to Mays, going to be a drum major and so forth. And I didn't know any of these schools. I mean, I didn't know the politics of that kind of thing. I just knew that I felt like I could be a good leader. And so tried out, and it became very clear pretty quickly that I was a favorite. And I made it that first year. And it was the start of a place I felt that, I had been ready for a long time, that I didn't realize I was ready for. If I look back in my junior ROTC days in high school, I was the group commander, right? I led different organizations and so forth, but this was just another leadership level that kind of really set me on the path of organizational leadership. Because when I became head drum major a year later, so I was a regular drum major the first year, but then I became head drum major. We were marching about 310, and I came up with a way to divide the band. The other 4 drum majors had sections. I divided the band up into sections the drum majors were responsible for on the practice field during sectionals, that kind of thing. They were responsible to do different things. And I just kind of oversaw the entire thing. And I worked with the band director, Mr. Wesley, to do some of the scheduling for travel. I was kind of all into the logistics and things with Miss Hall as well. And we ran really smoothly. That's when we got the Olympics. We got everybody together, that kind of thing. I did the scheduling as far as activities for band camp, me and the drum majors and so forth. And I think from my 2 years being head drum major were really transformative, because we had a marching style, but we kind of changed to be more fluid, a little bit of influence from like Jackson State, kind of movement, kind of like that. But the snap and drive you see from like a Florida A&M or Alabama State or Morris Brown. And so, we kind of changed the flavor of a drum major of what we did, and we did more performance type things instead of just marching. And a lot of that influence came from the previous set of drum majors. They call them the Fab Five, Andy Ragley, Barney Smart, Shad Hudson, that group. And they just, they kind of set it in motion, but we kind of took it forward to grow it a little bit more. But that was leadership. That was one thing I think that marching bands do, HBCU marching bands. It brings out different characteristics in the individuals that participate that may not have been there. You have the opportunity to lead, you have the opportunity to follow, you have the opportunity to grow and to become different, to kind of come out of your shell because of the environment and the community that you develop, the family that you develop in the marching band program.
Wow.
Yeah.
All I can do is just sit here and just watch you, listen to you talk. And yeah, you're answering all my questions for me. But one that we haven't talked about is your
Mhm.
director. So tell me about your band director at Alabama A&M, and what was this person like? What was their leadership style?
Oh, so Mr. Wesley, Mr. Arthur Wesley, he marched at Florida A&M, and he was the band director when I arrived at A&M. He was the band director when I left as well. He retired shortly after that. He was a very interesting and a kind of eccentric person. I love him to death. I love him to this day, and I love him to death. He was really about perfection. If you can imagine, Florida A&M back in the day, right? Dr. Foster really developing this craft, and you know, him being there and growing, and you have to imagine, what it was like marching back then. It was really a process to be one of the 100, right?
Mhm.
And he kind of developed that at A&M to have that pride. And so being a member of the marching band, just a regular member of the marching band, well, there was a different relationship between Mr. Wesley and when you became a drum major, when I became a drum major, because he was very heavy on, you are the drum major, you are the head drum major, you're responsible for this program, you're responsible for the show looking the way it should, the marching style, making sure you're everybody's marching 8 to 5, you're up on 8 or up on 1, whatever it was, and your turns and everything. You're responsible for teaching incoming freshmen and refreshing returning members on your marching style. You have to make this band program look good. And so it became a pretty stressful relationship once I became head drum major, because man, I still wake up to this day with hearing Mr. Wesley, Michael Lee, get over here, Michael Lee. Drum major, get over here. Take it back. Take it back. Top to the top of the show, that kind of thing. But it was a loving relationship because I think we both were pointing in the same direction. We were both trying to get the same thing out of this, the same thing out of the program, and that's perfection as much as we could. And I think we got pretty close, especially our levels were really measured at our big games, homecoming and Magic City Classic.
Mhm.
To some extent, the Tuskegee game.
Talk about that just a
Mhm.
second. So, of course,
Yeah.
you're going to have your regular opponents throughout the year. But, the
Mhm.
big thing I hear about Alabama A&M is the Magic City Classic. And I know that, in our
Uh-huh.
early days of doing the fifth quarter, I remember that picture of you in the zoot suits with the other drum majors. And like y'all
Yes.
had that
Mhm.
zoot suit theme show. And
Yeah.
yeah, so tell me about the Magic City Classic. That's a classic that I have not been to yet that I really want to go to.
Oh, Christy. The Magic City Classic is like nothing you've ever seen before. And I've been to lots of classics. I've been to lots of games, lots of events. The Magic City Classic is hard to describe. The energy and the power and the pride that goes into Magic City Classic. It's you know you could probably see the same level of pride in different places. You could probably see the same level of energy in different places, or history in different places. But to see everything in one place is as well as the hatred of one another, the lovingly hatred of one another. It's You can find those things in a lot of different places, but find them all together in one place. That's good. That's the Magic City. You work all year, starting day one of band camp, being prepared to prepare yourself for what you're going to do at the Magic City Classic. You work extra hard. You have practices from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. every day for 2 weeks, because we usually have a bye week before the classic. Uh, you have a dinner break, I think from 5 to 6 or 6 to 7. But then you come back and you practice, you're inside, you're outside, you're working on your music, you work your marching style, your dance routine. Then you have your drum major entrance, was a completely different thing. That's when you go all out with your band director entrances. And so, at A&M, like one year we came out of a spaceship. We were the AT aliens, and we had smoke and we had fireworks and we had spacesuits on, the drum majors. No, we had these we were inside of these blobs. So we were marching, we did our drum major entrance in these blobs, and we came out and we had spacesuits on, and we did the whole performance in those spacesuits, like boots on and everything. One year we came out doing a Cab Calloway show. We were in our zoot suits, and we turned it out. And when I say turn it out, I mean like deafening, definitely loud crowd noise. Screaming and yelling and, calling out. And you got your boos from the Alabama State side, but you got your cheers from the A&M side. And the energy is unexplainable. There is definitely the biggest game of the season, the biggest performance of the season. And that's when you had your books, your stand books. So I think we had, most of the time we had 45 to 55 songs that we just played back to back, just going after each other until one of us left. That's in the 5th quarter. So Majesty Classic, if anybody has never gone to one, go, and I promise you will thank me later.
All right, y'all. I hope y'all had a good time listening to Mike Lee's interview, but let me just tell you, our conversation went on for longer than that. And so, we didn't even get to the point where we talked about the 5th quarter. So what I'm going to do is next week, I'm going to air our part of the interview where we talked about the 5th quarter. And I know some of you all band heads will probably, want to hear how we connected and how we made the site and all that good stuff. And it was just too good to pass up. So next week, we are going to talk all about the 5th. Take care, everybody, and have a great week. You have listened to the HBCU Band Experience with Christy Walker. Interviews and editing conducted by yours truly, Dr. Christy Walker. The music is District 4 by Kevin MacLeod, and you can find this podcast on HBCUbandexperience.podbean.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Take care.